What's wrong with me? Live.
There's the word. There it is.
From an ESG stained portrait of Rainbow Jesus. What the hell is that?
I don't even know what that is.
It's an all-new, terrific Tuesday edition of Business Pants featuring analyst hole Matt Moscardi. Wow.
And Hazelnut Rollins.
That's true. Okay, on today's, I always make fun of ISS and Glass Lewis, so I'm changing it now. On today's Egan Jones ESG policy, which generally supports candidates with a strong board accountability and governance record. That's their
language.
That's their language. Called May 27th, 2025, the Who Do You Blame game. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I blame Egan Jones now.
I like that. They generally support candidates with a strong board accountability and governance record. That's amazing.
Do they talk about how they establish what the record is?
Well, one thing they say is including composition and independence of the board and key board committees, attendance history, and overboarding. Wow.
Wow. They count the number of boards they're on.
What a contribution.
They count whether they show up to the meetings, and then they count them if the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ says they're independent.
Additionally, the TSR of the company as compared to the industry is considered.
Oh.
I don't know what that means.
That means they look at that number.
So they're suggesting that the directors influence stuff. Aren't they suggesting that then? Or no, it's just considered. I don't know.
It sounds like they are holding directors accountable for TSR, is what they consider TSR to be in the purview of the directors. Is that what they consider?
I just love that they say all this fun stuff. I just love it. They don't define it, but they say it.
Yeah, well, you got to say something.
They look, Matt. They look at board composition. I don't know what that means.
They look at the pictures of the board members.
Yeah. All right. Ready?
Our show.
Our show today is being sponsored by Free Float Analytics, the only platform measuring board power connections and performance for free. Actually, I'm just realizing that Egan Jones could hop on over there. They could actually really enhance what they're doing by looking at that data.
Yeah, it's free. Yeah. Just download it, guys.
I do like that attendance history. I like that attendance history. Does that mean like all the way back to like kindergarten? How far back does that go?
No, I just like the idea that like we don't care if they showed up at all this year as long as they showed up in prior years.
Shout out to my old school friend Zach Atwell. It's the first time I've ever shouted out anyone in my life. He had perfect attendance his entire school from K to 12. Perfect attendance.
Wow.
So I would think that Egan Jones would support him for every because they look at attendance history,
any board position forever. Yeah, that's
K through 12 never missed a day of school. The bastard. Isn't that amazing? I love that.
What a smart man. Let's blame.
I didn't say that. All right.
Let's blame some people. Are you ready? Blame
I'm ready.
Someone. I want to hear you blame.
I'm going to start off with a softball just to get it going. Just kind of, it's also maybe to give the audience an understanding of how this game works. Here's the headline. Tesla's Europe sales plunge 49% on brand damage and rising competition. Who do you blame? This is an easy one, just to get going. Kind of wet your whistle.
Okay.
Do you blame Elon?
Ooh.
Do you blame liberals who hate Elon, right? Maybe it's not just Elon's fault, right?
Good point.
Do you blame like Trump 2.0 in general? I don't know, right? Maybe.
But just the vibe.
How about the Tesla board? I mean, like I'm looking directly at people like Robin Denholm, the chair, and Kimball Musk, Elon's brother.
Wow, I blame Kimball for everything that happens in my life.
How about apathetic Tesla investors who hold no one accountable? That could be a choice. See, I'm just trying to, again, I'm throwing this out there to describe the game. And finally, how about blame nobody? The share price is king. It's all about the share price.
Oh, right? There it is.
Okay, that could be the answer. Right, why do we care anyway, right?
Tesla's Europe sales plunge is probably the fault of nobody, right? Isn't it nobody's fault? That's because the point. That's how he retains power. That's how the board never gets voted out. that's you know, it would be easy to like say the libs are at fault, but Europe, there's not like the libs in Europe. It's not as much of a thing, right? Like
Well, I guess
Europe is
Americans would
basically
say
a
that they're
giant
all
lib.
libs. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's one giant lib. So you
Even
can't.
though having spent some time there, there's a lot
How
of
could it possibly
non-libs.
be Elon's fault? He's running 5 separate companies. So like he
Well,
wasn't looking the day those sales happened.
he did claim, I think, over the weekend that he's now 24/7 back at his other companies, Tesla,
Yeah.
X, was that called XAI?
Yeah, he said he will be
24/7.
he said actually that he will be sleeping on the manufacturing floor / server floor / he named like 7 places that he has to sleep in order to
dope.
24/7 manage all of his companies.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, the correct answer is nobody.
Okay.
There's no one to blame here. Everybody just go about your business.
Moving on. Now a more complicated one. Here's
Oh,
the headline.
I don't like complicated.
Here's the headline. ISS. We talk a lot about ISS here. They're one of the main proxy advisory companies. ISS
They're
backs.
like Egan-Jones, only smaller.
Yeah, I didn't have a Egan-Jones headline though. ISS backs Dynavax directors in board fight with Deep Track Capital.
Ooh.
This is actually a pretty big deal. Deep Track Capital has almost 15% of the company. I mean, this is not like a little, right? I mean,
That's a lot.
You would think at a minimum they'd be like, I mean, you own at least a director's seat worth of shares. Like, we'll give you 1 seat, right? But no, ISS said no to everybody. Dynavax wants, I think, 4 new directors. Part of what they're looking for is to prioritize the development of the company's hepatitis B vaccine. ISS said vote for all the Dynavax directors because Deep Track Capital has, quote, failed to present a compelling case that change is necessary at this meeting. Despite the fact that they said, Matt, ISS also said, despite the fact that there has been a stall in momentum at the company.
Is the compelling case that they own 15% of the shares?
Look, I mean, I originally chose this story just to kind of make fun of ISS a little bit until I saw that number and I was like, wait, ISS, I mean, don't you kind of have to let them have a director anyway? Like, let's be fair.
Look, the only other shareholder
15%. 15.
The only other shareholder who has a larger position is BlackRock at nearly 17%, and BlackRock, the vast majority of that is passive, right? Like, so BlackRock doesn't actually have a stake in Dynavax. It does seem like the only ones who matter here are Deep Track Capital, right? Is that
just seems rude? By the way, they put up 4 nominees. ISS can't find one, but let's play the game. Who do you blame? Do you blame ISS, Matt, just for a general inability to articulate big ideas with data? Like they don't really come at you with data. They just kind of say, I'm not convinced.
That
they're like, nah.
I mean, did they say that anybody appeared to not have a good enough credentials?
I read the report.
You read the report?
I read the ISS report. It said this. It said, I don't know.
See, here I thought maybe you did read
not
the report.
Do you blame Dynavax's current board knowledge profile? Well, it's pretty balanced overall with sciencey stuff like medicine and dentistry, biology, and even like a reasonable amount of economics and accounting. The board notably lacks sales and marketing. There are no directors on the board where Free Flow Analytics considers them to have an expertise in sales and marketing. So should we blame the board for getting the company into this in the first place? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's tough. I don't know if I want to blame them yet until I hear all the options.
And I will say this: one of the Deep Track Capital nominees is someone who kind of seems to fit the bill. He's the interim CEO and he is the COO at Lykos Therapeutics. He oversaw the commercialization of Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine. He had
Oh.
marketing and sales experience at
No, no, no,
Sanofi
no, no,
Pasteur.
no, no, no. He was involved with the COVID-19 vaccine. He is a woke elitist funded by George Soros.
Again,
It's like,
I don't know why ISS wouldn't just let this guy through. Anyway, do you blame ISS again?
oh, a different reason.
Yeah, for ignoring the presence of 15-year director and nominating committee chair Daniel Kistner. Why is this guy, Matt, allowed to stay there for so long and dominate the selection of directors? Why are they advocating for him? Especially considering, Matt, that it's a committee of only 3. A second member of the committee is the other long-term director, Francis Cano, who's 80 years old and has been there for 16 years. Can we blame ISS for ignoring that? Can we?
They didn't ignore that. You read their report. They said, they didn't ignore it.
Finally, this one, can we blame the board's atrocious lack of annual elections? While the company celebrates the appointments, so they've been touting that they have 2 new directors in early 2025. Thus, we don't need deep, what's it called, deep track capital's directors. But one of those new directors, Matt, is a man named Emilio Amini, who won't even be up to shareholder vote until 2027.
I did read that.
How
this
is ISS buying into that? How is you'd think at a minimum ISS would say, hey, look, I hate the deep track capital nominees. They're idiots. I've met them. They can barely form a coherent sentence, but you can't have 2 long tenured directors on your nominating committee. And God forbid, you gotta get rid of the classified board. I mean, no governance experts anywhere support classified board elections, right? I mean, but ISS just said, Yeah,
Look,
go ahead.
Here's a quote. Dynavax, the
Deep Track Capital.
Deep Track Capital put out,
that's the investor,
quoted ISS and rebutted it a little bit in a press release. They wrote this: ISS acknowledges that the company has, quote, a number of suboptimal corporate governance provisions.
Yeah, what are we doing here?
What are we doing here?
I don't know.
What are we doing?
I mean, do
we have to go beyond that?
ISS, do you not blame the board for those suboptimal conditions? Do you think there's just like they went to some roulette wheel and the price is right and they pulled a lever and then it gave the company the corporate governance conditions it had to exist under for the next 30 years? Is that how ISS thinks these things work? It's just like it's a carnival game. That's how
apparently
this works.
The board also set key performance metrics for the company, and then the company didn't hit them. But ISS just didn't acknowledge that.
Do they just hate Deep Track Capital? What's the deal here? I mean, really, they didn't give in an inch. This is just stupid. I'm sorry.
Do you think Deep
dumb.
Track Capital didn't call them on their birthday last year? Right?
That could be it.
But
I have a particular
expectation.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's an expectation that these activists engage with the proxy advisors, right? It's
okay, but can you really call someone who has a 15% stake an activist? I mean, they
just own the company, basically.
That's a huge chunk of the company. They are the shareholders. They're the full 1/8 of the entire shareholding class.
It's really hard to blame the board here because the board got them into the problem.
Oh, can't blame the board. Okay, so you're with
board.
ISS. Okay.
I'm with it's not their fault.
No.
That Deep Track Capital took an activist stake and ISS disagreed with Deep Track Capital. It's not their fault.
Whose fault is it? Who do you blame?
I think the only one to it's hard to. I'm not going to blame their board knowledge profile. I know that was a shameless plug of our knowledge data.
I just thought it was interesting that Deep Track Capital is pushing back against certain conditions, certain expectations of the company. And when I looked, there was a very glaring 0% under sales and marketing. You would think a drug company like this absolutely needs some expertise in that area. And in fact, Deep Track Capital, they did submit at least one candidate who had a good background in that. And as I said at the top of this, Come on, ISS. You can let one person through. Just one.
I'm a fan of whatever analyst at ISS wrote a number of suboptimal corporate governance provisions.
But we're not going to say anything about that. We're
and
not going to
suboptimal. Right?
But this is not the time to
I mean, the translation of that is their governance structure sucks ass.
But we're not. But this is not the time.
But this is not the time or the place.
This is not
to
the
allow,
place. No.
Allow someone who owns 15% of the company to dictate what happens with the company they own. Right?
Call me in 2040.
In which case, I'm really left with two options here. ISS for their inability to articulate big ideas, which is ISS writing in their report.
Yeah.
Or ISS for ignoring the presence of 15-year director, basically ignoring stuff. I'm going to go with the ISS's report that says as my answer. I think that's the correct
Maybe
answer.
I should be more maybe I should be more fair to ISS. Maybe there are instances like this where they get their report about the company, their governance report, and then someone spills chocolate sauce on it and they don't really they're like, "Oh shit, what Wait, what
did I write there?
Yeah, what? Who is that again?
I think they just give it out redacted that way, like chocolate sauce covering key portions. Of
I
the
just
report.
don't. I just again, I don't. I hope you know what. We have some very kind listeners from some other companies that write to us occasionally and help us through some of my bigger questions. I just wish someone from ISS would reach out and just tell me this. Wouldn't you at least agree that the optics of decisions like this make you look a little dopey? And if you're offended by the word dopey, I'll just say this: why won't you at least suggest a method to remove suboptimal governance positions at a company going through a major fight with a 15% shareholder? Why would you press release the fact that you want to do nothing? I don't understand that.
Also, why is it they said the dissident has not presented a compelling case for change. The dissident owns 15% of the company. Why is the dissident telling you what compelling? You're saying they have suboptimal governance provisions.
Yeah,
yourself.
But is that not a situation you want to should be changed?
What
Isn't
does
that
the
a compelling?
have to tell you about it? It doesn't.
I just figure at that percentage of shareholding anyway. If they put up 4 candidates, do the math. Give them one. I mean, you can give them one.
Here's
right?
a quote that Dynavax pulled. This is how incredibly specific the ISS report is. The basic logic underpinning the company's strategy is self-evident. What do we need you for then? They basically said Dynavax said some stuff and the logic is obvious. So
this is
we're
Glass
siding
Lewis.
with the company.
This is like Glass Lewis deciding it should respect the decisions of all nomination committees. That's their word is king.
And here's the worst part. They said the board has also demonstrated ongoing refreshment efforts as 6 of the 9 directors have been appointed since 2020. All right. That's 1 director a year since 2020. That is exactly what everybody else does.
Yeah.
That is not Dynavax is not above and beyond on refreshment efforts. And they still manage to have multiple directors with 15 years plus tenure, right?
Not to mention.
What are we doing?
Not to mention ISS. I don't know if you're paying attention, but of all publications, the Wall Street Journal, which is not a liberal publication, their big article last week, and we're covering this later in the game, the headline is, "What makes a great board director? It's hard to define, but has rarely been more crucial." So even the Wall Street Journal is saying, hot damn, we got to be paying attention to these directors. And yet in this situation, ISS is just I don't know.
Yes. So that's who I blame.
Why don't you take over? Why don't you do one? Because I need a break from that.
Yeah, that was a lot.
And by the way,
a lot of thinking.
While I do want ISS to reach out and walk me through some things, I'm not. This is not about ISS. I'm not here to make fun of ISS. I'm just making fun of individual statements that come from companies that I think are lack any kind of coherent or educated or compelling
Well,
you know,
let's mea culpa here.
logic.
So
Yeah.
when I was at MSCI, I had to write reports about the financial sector companies. This was like when I first started at MSCI. I had to write reports.
Never heard of ChatGPT?
Well, I had heard of it, but
Yeah.
I refused to use it 15 years ago. So I had to write these reports that
When
were
Sam
like
Altman was in second grade. Yeah. go
I
ahead.
had to make some sort of assessment, and a lot of times, for everything that's not on the polls, like the worst company or the best company, it's really hard to make an assessment that means anything, right? Like you do resort to a lot of like, it appears that blah, 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 blah. Now, this is a time when no company would talk to me, right? Like they didn't engage, like ESG ratings and data. No one cared about it. Like 20 years ago, no one would talk to me. They were all like, why would I talk to you? You're a moron.
Yeah.
So we had to do a lot of it appears because no one talked to us. So I get it. I get your desire to sort of like land in this place where it appears that something is happening, right? Like, or we feel that yada, yada, yada. That said, you have access to the companies and you need to make a decision about it's a binary decision. You have to say like, here are like the 5 core reasons why we agree or disagree with a thing. You can dispense with the appears, and I'm going to make fun of you for it.
And you can
because it's dumb.
you even have free access to the data at freeflowanalytics.com. And
Yeah,
one
then
other
you could
thing.
just say it doesn't appear. This director underperformed. We're voting them out.
We're well beyond belaboring a point, but I will add one more thing. Whatever happened to diplomacy, ISS? Whatever happened to a good negotiation? You're just saying no, even though you're admitting suboptimal governance conditions. You're just saying no to the entire negotiation. Nothing.
No, nothing.
That's-
Nothing. There's no
that's
middle
sad.
ground.
I feel
There's
sad
no
about
middle ground.
that.
All right, here's one
All
for
right.
you.
Yeah.
The headline is Ball CFO.
Ball, like the jar.
Ball
Yeah.
Corporation. Yeah,
Like
the
the mason
jars.
jar,
Yeah.
yeah.
To depart after less than 2 years in the role.
We see this all the time. We do the show, The Proxy Countdown. We talk a lot about the comings and goings of executives and directors. CFOs, Matt, I feel like they just show up for a couple of years and they just leave with a big golden parachute. Like that's their job now. And they get a golden hello at their next company. Like I don't know what's going on.
So there is no next company that was announced. There's no
Okay.
whatever. The CFO in question is Howard Yu. He started 1 year and 9 months ago.
Yeah.
He's young. He's 51 or 52 years old. And the company put out a press release that says, quote, the departure is not related to any disagreement with the company on any matter related to its accounting practices, financial statements, internal controls, or operations.
Huh.
Which actually leaves some room, right? Like they
Yeah.
were specific. They said he didn't disagree with our accounting stuff or the numbers that we put down,
Yeah.
but he may have disagreed with, I don't know, like the hem length on his, his boss's dress,
Okay, now
or
you're pushing
like
it.
who knows? It doesn't say. It doesn't say.
Before
I'm
you
just
get
telling you what they wrote.
before you get going here, is this like his first job out of college? Did he have the experience
Oh, no,
necessary to
no.
be CFO?
He's
not like straight out of high school. He's not like straight from being a dishwasher at Pizzeria
multiple
Uno.
a CFO job before this.
Okay, he knows
like
what
a
he's
deep
doing. Okay,
background.
all right,
He's a
got
guy like background in accounting.
Yeah.
Guy who knows what he's doing.
I love how this
So-
kind of behavior is okay in this setting.
So
Yeah.
who do we blame? Because the company didn't give us any real disclosure to talk about like why did he leave? Why
Yeah.
did Ball Corporation lose a CFO in 1 year and 9
I
months?
would think the board would be embarrassed and irritated. Go ahead.
Well, let's start with them. How about
Yeah.
Ball's audit committee?
Ooh.
Okay. The audit committee is the one who works most closely with the CFO. They get all the numbers. The audit
of
committee
course.
at Ball, 29% of the company influence is on the audit committee. So it's actually not a very influential
Okay.
committee.
Well,
But-
all right.
But maybe they're a little too busy to have been paying attention to the CFO, and he just felt neglected. That's why he
Why
left.
do you say that?
Because
Yeah.
on the audit committee, we know the audit committee roles are hugely time-consuming. Kathy Ross, the chair of the audit committee, she's the ex-CFO of FedEx. She's on 2 audit committees outside of this one.
Two
She's on
other.
2 other audit
Not
committees.
only that, but she's probably like, she's like, this is stupid. I was a CFO of FedEx. What do we do here? We make
What are we doing here? We make
jars?
lids on
Like this,
jars.
Is
What
this
are we
for a
doing?
real company? Yeah. Okay.
How about John Bryant, also
Yeah.
on the committee? He's the ex-CFO of Kellogg, or
Yeah, the
CEO
cereal.
of Kellogg,
Yeah,
sorry.
cereal
That's
company,
the
yeah.
cereal company. He's on 4 audit committees,
No,
including
that's not
this one.
What?
4.
Is that true?
That's true. He's on 4
That's pretty
audit
rare,
committees,
right?
including this one. Yes.
That's yeah, I don't see
That
that very
means
often.
every board he's on an audit committee. That's
and
like
we've been covering in recent shows that's a busy committee.
that's a very busy committee.
Whether
In
they're
fact,
powerful or not doesn't matter. They're very busy. They have the most meetings, and they have by far the most annoying paperwork.
it's so much
that's a
to
quote.
read.
It's annoying.
It's so often. We know that to be true. Could it be Michael Cave, the ex-Boeing executive who was at Boeing back in the 87 Max or 747 Max or whatever those planes were that fell out of the sky, right?
Seems easy to blame, yeah.
He's only on the ball audit committee, but like he was a lifer at Boeing, so he might just be distracted in general. Like it's hard to tell. Or is it? And then there's Todd Penegor, who's the current CEO of Papa John's.
Really?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
he's on 3 boards.
Whoa.
So he's
Wow.
an acting CEO on 3
Super
boards.
busy. This guy's super busy.
So maybe the ball audit committee is just way too busy, and Howard
Well,
Hughes just felt neglected.
To be fair, though, maybe Todd is coming up with some kind of synergy with Ball, where they're doing like pizza in a jar kind of a promotion.
Ooh,
right?
that might be the best idea you've ever had.
Hot pizza in a glass jar. Yeah.
It could be Ball's nominating committee.
Oh, really? I was feeling pretty good about blaming the audit committee, but go ahead.
Well, the nominating committee has 48% of the company influence on that committee.
Wow.
So it's a pretty strong committee. It's the strongest committee on the board.
Yeah, you know why? Because they often shove like the longest tenured director there to control everything.
Well, this is the committee that ostensibly would have chosen Howard Yu as the
Course.
CFO, right? They would
Course.
have worked with
Absolutely.
the CEO, and they would have been
Absolutely.
involved in this choice.
No doubt.
And maybe they just suck at their jobs. On this committee is Stuart Taylor, who's been on the board since 1999.
Wow.
What do you like to your point about the longest tenured director just shoved on the
Yeah.
committee? That's what this
Good
is.
luck. Good luck arguing him out of anything.
They have 2 other Dune Ives and Aaron Erder who are newer, but also on this committee are Kathy Ross and John Bryant, who are on the audit committee.
Wow. Okay.
So you've got 2 directors in 2 separate committees who we could arguably blame for the departure of Howard Yu.
okay, it's compelling.
And then there's Howard Yu himself.
No.
Maybe we can blame him.
No.
He departed unrelated to any disagreement with the company about the financials. Maybe he had disagreements about other things.
No. Because like if you're like a sports fan and your management hires like a coach that is terrible and gets booed out of town, you're mad at the management. You're mad at ownership. You're not mad at Howard Yu. You're not, right? You're like, why do you keep picking horrible coaches? That's what you're like.
Well, the other options here are the CEO, right? Just
Uh-huh.
I mean, it could just
You're
be
just you're just
Fishers.
throwing out names.
I mean, like the CFO works very closely with the CEO.
Look,
and
I
the
already
CEO
have
is
an
the
answer.
chair of the board also.
I'm
And
ready
then
to answer.
finally, maybe you just want to blame Kathy Ross and John Bryant, who are on both of the committees by themselves, right? Like
Okay,
forget the
interesting.
full committee.
Actually,
right? Like,
okay, now I'm changing
see what
my
I'm
mind.
doing there? See what I'm
Yeah,
doing?
I was ready to answer. I was all in on the audit committee because you don't actually see a lot of audit committees where they're overboarded audit committee members.
Over
right?
audited. Yeah.
Like that's just weird. But then I like what you're saying actually, because another thing you don't see often is you don't see a great overlap with the nominating committee and the audit committee. Usually the audit committee, all the nerds are there.
Yeah.
The
like
accountants,
they put them in
the
the dark
CFOs,
room. Yeah.
but not the networky people, right?
Right. So this
So-
is a
So to have that overlap, I'm going to go right for it. I like what you're doing. I'm going to blame, who were the 2 overlaps?
Kathy Ross and John Bryant.
That's
the 2
it.
overlaps. There you go.
Vote 'em
now we
out.
know who to blame.
Yeah,
We
I love
figured
it.
them out.
Wow,
Figured
that
it
was
out.
easy, actually. ISS, are you listening? I mean, really, there's so many different ways to handle anything that you're trying to accomplish.
All right, you do another one, and then I'll do one after.
All right, I got one more long, annoying one. I'm going to go with that one.
Oh,
Pepsi.
good. I love when you precede it with
Yeah.
like a real upper.
PepsiCo is pushing back its climate goals. They said Thursday that they're pushing back by a decade its goal to achieve net zero emissions from 2040 to 2050. And I mean, you got to believe it's going to happen in 2050.
It's definitely going
right?
to happen by then.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
definitely going to happen by then.
Jim Andrew, Chief Sustainability Officer, says, I like this quote. He says, PepsiCo's ability to make progress at the rate it would like to, quote, is very, very dependent on the systems around us changing. So he said that he added the world was a very different place in 2020. So what basically he's suggesting that the political winds have changed and that it's very, very hard to do his job anymore. And and everything is just very, very annoying. And you don't know what it's like to have a very, very difficult 2040 target and get your very, very opinionated
Can
self
I have
out
a
of
very,
here. Yeah.
very sugary drink?
But
now after
people are
saying all
telling the
that?
truth. When my kids do that, like they repeat things like that. I know that there's maybe a little bit of dishonesty going on. Very, very.
Dad, I'm very, very, very tired right now. Right?
Sorry, Jim Andrew, but someone had to do it. So who do
Honestly,
you blame? Yeah.
Well, just the quote alone,
Yeah.
I like my instant desires to blame Jim Andrew because
Well,
like
I'm glad you mentioned that because we can start the who do you blame game now for PepsiCo pushing back its climate goals. I actually don't blame him because I know I actually know that this dude,
Jim.
This dude is probably giving it a go, and everyone around him is laughing at him constantly. Yeah, I bet he's trying hard. I really do. I really believe in Jim. I do.
That's fine.
He's frustrated.
But I do have a problem with saying that like something is very, very dependent on system. We are going to basically renege on a target we had. Basically, what he's saying is we did a very bad job of making the target
in the first place.
We didn't consider that anything could change from right now when we made it.
And by the way, Jim, the world is not a very different place now than it was from 2020. That's just flat out wrong. What has happened is that we do have a new president who's an annoying tyrant who hates things like net zero emission goals, but the world is actually not in a very different place. Like that's just not. Anyway, I'll get off that point. Who do you blame? Do you blame? And you know what? I'll let you add Jim Andrew, but I'm not going to cite him as someone to blame. Do you blame Pepsi's very large board, Matt? 15 directors.
Wow.
In fact, most governance experts will tell you that the sweet spot is somewhere between 7 and 11, really, which means like 8 or 9, really. Anything over 11, boards often suffer from slower decision making and diluted accountability. I love that one.
Ooh,
diluted
I like that
accountability, right?
Yeah.
So do you blame their very large board, which is basically ineffective? How about this? Do you blame Pepsi's completely protected class of directors? Matt, nothing can touch this director set. According to MSCI data, no current director has received more than 9% votes against since the 2015 AGM. That was a decade ago. In fact, since 2015, average support for a PepsiCo director is 97%. They're completely protected from any. It doesn't matter what decisions are made. They're completely protected. Not a blip. Doesn't matter, right? So you could blame that. How about this one? Can you blame the fact that the company is named PepsiCo and not Pepsi, which I always find irritating. I hate that.
Yeah. That's interesting. Maybe we'll come back to that one.
ISS actually might want to use that for more excuses. And finally, how about this one? This is free flow data you can only find at freeflowanalytics.com. Do you blame Pepsi's gender influence gap of minus 11%? In fact, Matt, of the top 7 most influential directors at PepsiCo, 6 are men with 68% aggregate influence. So this is a sausage factory. This is a bro club. And I like this. Here's a little side a piece of information to think about while you're trying to figure out who to blame. The only woman who have any influence on Pepsi is Dina Dublon. She's the former CFO at J.P. Morgan Chase, right? She's been on the board for 2 decades at Pepsi. She's also the director at Westchester Land Trust, right?
Okay, I don't know what that is.
The land trust is there to protect the natural resources of Westchester County, right?
Oh,
which you think would be enough to sway the board to keep its climate goals, but I guess not.
I think there's like 4 feet of grass in Westchester County right now.
And I just wanted to point this out because I just wanted you to pay attention. I know that Free Flow Analytics has a lot of data now from nonprofit boards. I just wanted to point this out because this is why you should pay attention to the little hokey things in your area, like the Westchester Land Trust, because the chair of that board is Bruce Churchill, who is the director of 2 companies in our database, including Wyndham Hotels. So even the land trust, Matt, even the land trusts
where we stash
are shared by directors in our own database, which just makes me laugh. This guy comes from DirecTV, so that's a great benefit to the Westchester Land Trust, right? I mean, a TV guy. Anyway, I just thought that was funny. Yeah.
DirecTV too, so it's actually satellite. So he's good at air and land. Yeah. That's how good he is.
Yeah. Anyway, who do you blame at Pepsi for this, for moving their target?
Look, it's hard. The nature of the size of this board
15.
Makes it hard to blame. Like
it dilutes accountability, right?
Yeah, you can't pick like who on the board would I blame? Like, would you blame all of them? Because like, does that really make sense? Like, that like 6 of them were for keeping the targets, and 9 of them were like arguing against it. You can see, and then you've got.
I was gonna say I saw some footage of ISS actually they were doing a report on the board, the governance at Pepsi, and I saw the analyst. She had a bunch of paperwork in front of her, and she sighed loudly and she threw all the papers up in the air. Because 15 directors. She was just like,
what are you going to do? What are you
right?
Gonna do? I can't do anything.
I mean, it's Memorial Day. So go ahead.
I don't think it's the influence gap. I'm tempted by the name PepsiCo versus Pepsi.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the protected class of directors.
Right? 97% average for a full decade.
Look, here's the problem.
Yeah.
If you vote for people at a 97% agreed
You're
rate,
not voting, are you?
They will do whatever they want. There is forget the size of the board for accountability. Accountability is when you vote against someone on the board. And you didn't vote against anyone ever for any reason.
For anything. And what's interesting, too, is if you look at the data on freeflowanalytics.com, this board's hitting 400 overall compared to their peers. Their peers hit 581 overall. So something is amiss over there at Pepsi.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that one, though.
All
right. Should I do another one?
Yeah, go ahead.
We're going to enter like the 5th hour of this show pretty soon.
Is it that long already? Yeah. My last 2 are very quick. I'll go quickly my last 2.
This one's long-ish.
Okay.
Here's the headline. We've already covered this, but I love the headline. 93% of U.S. executives desire board member replacements.
Yes.
So this is from a survey of U.S. executives responding, saying that 9 out of 10 executives think that you should replace at least one person on the board. In fact, 7 out of 10 think you should replace 2 or more people on their own boards. Okay?
That's incredible.
I love this because now it gives me an opportunity to think about who they'd want to replace. Who do you blame on the board? Who are they trying to replace here? Your first option, old people on the board. Okay. There are 14,000 non-executive directors in the U.S. on boards these are the non-execs, right? Like non-executive directors, non-controlled companies. The average age of those 14,000 is 63 years old.
Mm-hmm.
There are 2,569 executive directors on boards with an average age of 58 years old.
Okay.
So there's a 5-year gap here. Like, like you must be looking and be like, oh my God, Grandpa, get off my board, right?
Yes, suggesting that the non-executive directors are retired executives, maybe?
They're mostly retired executives. Yeah. In fact, 298 companies in the U.S., almost 300 companies, have at least one director over the age of 80 on their board, okay? Directors over the age of 80 have an average of 9% influence on their boards.
Because they've probably been there for a while.
And 19 years of tenure.
Yeah, there you go.
They've been there forever.
Yeah.
And no one actually listens that closely to them. I mean, it's not like they have more power.
I know at Pepsi, Jim Andrews saying that the world is a very different place in 2020, but 20 years ago, I will actually agree the world is a very different place from 20 years ago, right?
What about that's the average?
I mean, can you imagine
some of them
that?
are 30 years?
Can you imagine some of the main issues at some of these corporations 20 years ago, before even like AI, social media?
Yeah, in 2005, we had
misinformation,
flip phones,
tariffs, COVID, like all of it. None of that existed.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's like I had the iPod Shuffle in 2005 when you joined the board.
Yeah.
2 directors in the U.S., Tommy Thompson
Ooh.
and John Harrington, 82 and 87 years young, are on 3 boards each still. In fact, there's one guy in our database, a guy named Meyer Luskin.
Yeah.
He is 100 years old.
I like that.
He's on the OSI Systems Board.
I like this.
He is the UCLA class of 1949.
Wow.
1949.
Yeah.
He
Straight
graduated
from the
UC
war to the
he
college.
graduated
World War
from
II, that is.
UCLA,
Yeah.
World War II. He has 6% influence after 35 years on the board.
That's it. Whoa, jeez. No one cares about Meyer.
So, look, my point here
I
is...
get it. Old people. I get it.
Old people, right?
You know, actually, I got to be honest. I don't know if what's coming up in your other categories, but I don't actually even mind old people as I mind long tenured old people.
Well,
It's the tenure I worry about the most.
I think they go hand in hand for the most part.
Often,
but I wonder if like a young CEO is thinking to themselves, like, that's the one I want off this board, like the old guy who doesn't get anything that I do
the guy
anymore.
who can't even find the charger for his BlackBerry.
Like,
mean?
do you think Meyer Luskin, when
Yeah.
they bring up AI at the OSI Systems meeting, do you think he knows what anyone's talking about? He can
No.
be incredibly smart, sharpest guy around, but does he really understand the
No.
technological advance?
He's too
of
busy
AI?
cursing the fact that his 9-volt battery will not go into his iPhone 14.
All right, how about outlandishly outsized influencers on boards?
This I like this. I like this category.
Of
yeah.
24,000 U.S. directors, 591 have more than 50% influence on
Yeah,
their
that's wrong.
boards.
That's
right?
not a public company. That's a private company.
And they're not always the executives. In
Right.
fact,
Founders, right?
they're often founders and family members who are
Family
no
members,
longer
true, yeah.
on the doing the company stuff.
Like
They're just
Walton
there.
kids. Walton kids.
Like, exactly. If you are the CEO of Walmart, what's his name? McMillan?
Yeah.
Doug McMillan?
Doug McMillan.
If you're Doug McMillan, don't you really wish you could vote out the Waltons?
Absolutely.
Like
absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
All right, how about this one? Connected directors that hate the unconnected directors. So basically,
Whoa.
are you targeting the unconnected directors?
Yeah.
There are 575 directors on boards who are connected to 50% or more of the board. At Target, 92% of the directors are connected through other boards or trade associations or nonprofits. That's 11 of 12 directors. Do you think
Wow.
that everyone just hates Dave Abney for having no obvious connections to them?
Yeah. I don't. That's a good question. If it was me, Dave would be the one I'd be listening to, because I feel like Dave has a lot of extra time to think about the world.
Yeah, but you're the U.S.
Not busy
executive,
at barbecues.
and you desire board member replacements. Isn't Dave Abney the guy you want to replace? Because you're like, does anybody even know Dave?
Yeah,
Does
who's
he even
Dave?
go to-
Yeah.
Who's Dave? Like, where did he come from? He doesn't go to our barbecues.
I'm pretty sure there's no director at Target named Dave Abney, is what they're saying.
And then finally, shrill women.
Oh, well, in 2025, isn't that all women?
There are 7,450 female directorships on U.S. public boards.
Okay.
Not directors, directorships.
Yeah, a
'Cause
lot of
there's
overboarding
much
there,
less.
maybe. Yeah.
596 of female directors have advanced degrees from elite schools.
That's it? I would think it'd be higher than that.
That's what our data has.
Less than
596 of
10%.
them.
Oh, you're talking about directorships, right?
Director,
Okay, yeah.
yes.
Yeah. That's their board
80
seats, yeah.
80 of them are non-executives at widely held corporations with no ties to the company or family, zero known connections to the existing
Wow.
board members.
How'd
So
they get that? How do they exist?
There are 80 women
Probably
with advanced degrees from
Yeah.
elite schools with no ties to the company and no connections to directors that are obvious.
Probably.
Don't-
I wonder
The
what
executives
percentage.
they're just wishing, like, can you just get out?
Well,
Stop saying smart ass shit and get out.
I'm actually wondering how many of those women are on boards where a woman is also the CEO. But
I did not check that,
yeah,
but I'm guessing that like when you can identify an other, right? That's who you're like. Can you just get out? Can you
yeah.
just get out now? So who do you think? Old people, outsized influencers, the unconnected directors the connected directors want to hate on, or shrill women? Who are the ones that U.S. executives are blaming and want replaced?
Wow, this is. I mean, can I say? Uh, well, I was gonna say all the above, but you know what? I don't know that they're. The ones that really stick out to me are old people, women, unfortunately, and unconnected directors. Those are the ones that really stand out to me.
All right, you can have all three.
Can I have
We
all
can
three of
blame
them?
all three. Yeah, we'll give you all
Look,
three.
because unfortunately, anecdotally, what we're seeing so far in this proxy season is a lot of boards kind of falling under that threshold of 3 women on the board. We're also seeing. I mean, I guarantee that connected directors don't like unconnected directors, just
Yeah, for
because
sure.
the country club of the directorhood. And we saw that. We saw in that report that they were citing old people, right, as they were irritated at old people. So yeah, I agree with that
That's
one too.
why I feel like old people are an obvious target. Nobody
Because
likes an
one
old
thing we've
person.
learned about the director of a U.S. public corporation is that more than anything else, they just want to feel comfortable with who they're hanging out with. They don't want to feel different than the person next to them. They're not comfortable with a woman or a black person or an old guy. Like they just kind of want their buds, right? They
Yeah,
want to
that's right.
right. They want to tell unwoke buddy jokes, right?
Yeah,
Like
you're gonna be seeing these people at least like 10 times a year, like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times a year, in a boardroom setting. You want to be able to tell an incredibly off-color joke
yeah, they don't want
without the shrill woman who's unconnected, who's 86 years old,
yeah.
saying that makes me uncomfortable.
I was going to add to that they don't want to work on things like their listening skills, right? Like
Yeah,
they
yeah.
don't.
Nobody,
Yeah,
come on, nobody's joined the board for
right.
that.
All right.
All right.
I'm gonna go quickly and try to wrap us up out of here.
I got one more after this.
Oh, you do have one more.
Yeah,
I guess
got
there is
one
no
more.
quick. Let me do both of mine. Just because I want to keep plugging this article from the Wall Street Journal, and yeah, we kind of make fun of it a little bit, but again, I do applaud the Wall Street Journal for kind of entering into this area
Yeah.
because what I do like is them saying it's rarely been more crucial to define what makes a good director, to focus on directors. I do applaud you, Wall Street Journal. You're probably big fans of our show because we're basically the
obviously.
only ones
Yeah.
in the entire governance world who have been banging this drum for years now.
But I isn't a big fan of this show.
but I sense that this is going to start picking up more and more. But the headline is what makes a great board director. It's hard to define, but it has rarely been more crucial. So who do you blame? Do you blame the Wall Street Journal for still failing to define it appropriately, despite being the effing Wall Street Journal? I mean, they're the Wall Street Journal, but they still can't get a control over this, Matt. Their methodology is confusing. That's the kindest.
It's
I
not
can
my
say.
favorite methodology.
Yeah,
Correct.
so do we blame them for its inability to still define it? Do we blame proxy advisory firms for not having the data that could better inform shareholders?
Ooh.
Do we blame the SEC and listing exchanges for not requiring the data that could better inform shareholders? Or do we blame every person in the world who does not use free flow analytics data?
There it is, baby.
Yeah.
That's the one I'm gonna choose that one.
Again, yeah, I was gonna say like the two things in this past week that more than ever that is doing, I hope, is acting as our sales and marketing team, because we don't have one, is this article that 93% of executives want to replace at least one director, right?
Right.
76% want to replace 2 directors, and the Wall Street Journal, not a liberal organization, not ESG friendly, jumping into the fray, saying, hey, we have to be articulating how directors are doing because it's crucial, right?
I will say this.
These things support our company. Yeah, go ahead.
I do want to say that I don't want to blame the SEC or listing exchanges. Like I feel like the environmental world, the ESG sort of proponent world, like ESG standards people, they blame regulators for the fact that we don't have information all the time. They're basically just like, it needs to be regulated. Everybody says it needs to be regulated in order for us to do this. Where it's not going to be, unless I get audited, regulated data, I'm not going to. I'm not going to be able to. Like, there is a time before audited, regulated data. You use unaudited, unregulated data every day. Like, I don't care what you say. There's like, like you look at app, stars, you look at, movie reviews, you're looking at you're using data all the time that you trust that is not audited. And it's just a lack of creativity that means you don't have the data.
My only pushback on that is that it's been since at least 2008, I think, that anything new has been added to the proxy statement for any required disclosure.
I don't disagree. I think they should do this.
2008.
I would love if the SEC just made information on the proxy part of XBRL or RSS feeds, right? Like, they allow you to download audited financial data through
XML,
XML rather, you can just get the data.
They've been promising
easily.
that since 2005, basically.
But you can't do it with the names of who's on the board, right? You can't even figure out who's on the board.
Terrible. Mm-hmm.
The proxy advisors, though, that's your job. You're 99% of
really
votes
is.
are for directors.
Yeah.
Your job is to have data on directors. I know you have data on directors, but why do we have no focus on how directors perform other than the TSR of the company they were on once?
I guarantee that Egan Jones, Glass Lewis, ISS all spent time reading that Wall Street Journal article this week. And so it's ISS, it's not enough to say that activists don't make compelling cases. What we actually need you to define why you're voting for directors at certain that's what the Wall Street Journal is asking. That's what we're asking, and we're basically as important as the Wall Street Journal. So there you go.
But the right answer, who to blame, is every person who does not use free float analytics data. That's the correct answer.
Okay, let me just wrap up quickly. 2025 U.S. proxy season finds sharp drop in shareholder resolutions on ballot. I've been covering this every week, the proxy countdown. I have the data to prove it. Large cap companies. Who do you blame? Trump 2.0? Yeah. Do you blame Darren Woods and Exxon because they sue shareholders, right?
Yeah.
Do you blame the anti-ESG shareholder proponents for depressing us with their political theater? Or do you just blame apathetic investors? This is an easy one. Quick one for you.
I'm going with Darren Woods and Exxon.
Right? It does seem to be that an important precedent, right?
This is the intended consequence.
Yes.
I mean, the easy case is Darren Woods and Exxon sues. They have zero shareholder proposals for the first time in 25 years.
Yeah, crazy.
That's a 1-to-1. That's exactly their goal. They wanted zero shareholder proposals.
And we're now seeing every week, I look at the large cap meetings, we're now seeing a majority of companies every week with zero shareholders. Nothing.
So that's definitely who I'm going to blame. All right, my last one, and we'll get out of here. Here's a headline. Meta buys 650 megawatts of renewable energy to power U.S. data centers.
Ugh, I don't need this. Yeah.
Okay. Do you blame AES Corporation? They're the woke Virginia-based energy company with 5 women and 6 men on the board.
Yeah. 63%
of the board have advanced degrees. 4 of the board members aren't even American.
We've been talking about this forever, that there are this subset of American companies they're extremely woke and diverse. Some of these power companies, some of these utility companies.
I mean, they're delivering energy with women? What is going on here?
Yeah.
That is nuts.
With a pink shovel? Yeah.
Do we blame Arkansas, the woke state that allowed the solar energy project to get built in it to deliver that energy to Meta? It's a project that was built in Arkansas.
Interesting.
I mean, what a woke state Arkansas is.
Yeah.
All they ever do is talk about trans parades and abortion there, right?
Yes.
So Arkansas. Do we blame Meta AI?
Ugh, we don't
because
need that.
AI is the reason they need that excess energy, and AI can't even discriminate against renewable energy because it's so woke. AI is woke and wants renewable energy.
Is that true? That's true.
I don't know.
Okay.
But ask ChatGPT,
Yeah.
maybe. They'll tell you. Do you blame Mark Zuckerberg?
Well, that's
Because
enticing.
there is no Meta. There's just Mark, the dual-class college
sure.
dropout dictator, right?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Or do you blame Mark Zuckerberg,
Oh, interesting.
the government ass-kissing Mark
Yeah,
Zuckerberg,
he
the
loves
MAGA
Trump.
convert?
Loves Trump, yeah.
He just attended the Qatari meeting with Trump, where
Really?
they call
Why?
it MAGA in the desert. He was
Why?
there along
Why?
with a bunch of tech bros.
Why?
And I think at this point, in order to purchase this energy, they have to negotiate. It takes years, and they have targets and stuff. I think Mark thought that this was going to be okay now. It's not his fault. He's always been super into oil, but back when they negotiated this a couple years ago, he felt like he had to because of Biden and wokeness and whatever. So Mark the ass kisser now is basically saying well, I would have chosen oil, but old Mark,
God,
would have chosen renewables.
Yeah.
So those are your options. The energy company, Arkansas, where the energy is being built, the AI, Zuck the dual class dictator, or Zuck the MAGA kiss up.
Well, I have a new rule when it comes to any company that we talked about, that when we talk about dictatorships, is that I'm going to blame the dictator. And in this case,
which version? That's why I gave you two.
Right, and exactly. And in this case, I'm going to vote for both because I'm voting Mark any way I can. It's always
Mark.
It's always the dictator's fault, right? We need to be taking these dictatorships more seriously. We need to be calling them out when we need to. I mean, absolutely.
I like the idea that Mark sits in a room and he's angry at old Mark, who is
look, you're right to say he is a dual class college dropout dictator. He only has this power because of dual class shares. So why can't there be dual class Marks? Why can't it be dual Marks? Why can't I hate both of them?
That's a good point.
Right?
That's all we've got. That's Hazelnut Morales. I'm your analyst, Matt Muscardi. We are free float. That was the blame game. I like the blame game, especially when we got it rolling.
It's instructive.
It's fun. It's fun to do. It's fun to go
Good demonstration of how to use data when making a case in the governance world, right? How to use data.
Stop shaming Egan Jones. They're upset with you. Tune in on Friday. We're going to have a wrap-up of the week. But also, check out the Proxy Countdown, which will come on Thursday. This Wednesday, we're dropping a shareholder primacy. They're going deep in on new Texas rules.
Oh,
the legalities of these new Texas rules that are coming out for the listing and for governance. All
Can't
the
sue the
stuff
directors anymore, I guess.
It's unbelievable what they're talking about in Texas, but you can listen to Mike Levin and Ann Lipton go through it. Good for them because they're smarter than us. Until then, goodbye.